we need support in different ways. We need to assemble people we trust, people who have wisdom for us. But at the center of that support squad, being our own primary care provider, we're the CEO of our health, we've got to be at the center of it. The difference is again, that piece of how do I actually do these things and how do I actually incorporate myself into them? What are my preferences? What do I know that maybe a doctor, a textbook, a podcast will never tell you? That's the real learning when we go out to implement some of these things.
What if I told you that the same mindset that builds championship teams also builds an extraordinary life? The same discipline that drives elite performance to greatness is the discipline that unlocks a longer, stronger, and more resilient future. This is where peak health meets peak performance, where we explore the science of longevity and the mindset of greatness. Because your legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you show up with every single day. This is the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. I'm Zach Dancel, your host. Welcome back to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. This show exists for people who have, refused to let life, circumstances, or even diagnosis decide the ceiling on who they can become. Because the truth is, and we don't talk about it enough, but life is hard, right? Health is hard. Being sick is hard. Being successful in your career or not being successful in your career is hard. So the real question isn't how do we avoid hard, but it's which hard am I willing to choose? And today's conversation is about that exact mindset, the frameworks, the shapings. My guest is Dr. Amy Behimer. She's a doctor of pharmacy, a board-certified health coach and wellness coach, and the host of Autoimmune Health Secrets podcast. But more importantly, Amy lives this work every single day. She was diagnosed at an early age with MS, and instead of just letting that diagnosis shrink her world, she built a philosophy and frameworks around self-leadership, sustainable habits, and how she can manage her energy on a day-to-day basis to really live a good life. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
No, of course. So, Amy, I always like to start here with the origin story, right? Because I think it really matters for, people to, one, get to know who you are, but also, I think, people who make some of the biggest impact in health are almost always shaped by a moment where the system failed them or confused them or gave them information, without a roadmap, right? I myself, my mom, the system failed her, right? And that really shaped, who my family is as a whole, and especially me. So, take us back to, when you were first diagnosed with MS. You were a PharmD or in school, and so you understood medicine. What did that moment do to your identity, and how did it reshape how you think about health today?
Yeah, you mentioned a few of the lenses I see the world through and live through, the pharmacy background. So I'm very ingrained in the conventional medicine side of things. And there are a lot of things that I appreciate and love about it. I'm somebody who chooses to take a disease modifying therapy. I trust the science. I call that my defense. It is, hopefully keeping progression at bay as best as it can. Then there is this other lens that you mentioned where I went back to school to learn about functional medicine and deciding that I don't want to be another expert, another practitioner, helping people by telling them the things to do. But I saw that, even in pharmacy, I'm a leader in pharmacy. So very early in my career, I transitioned from the bedside to leading a team of pharmacists. And so I leaned into my strengths and thought, I want to do this thing, but I want to do it through a coaching lens, because this mindset that you're talking about, it's not supernatural. And I feel like people think, oh, I'm just not positive. The number of people who think I'm just not optimistic, or they label themselves as a pessimist, or my husband will say I'm a realist, versus getting super, curious around what do the people do if it doesn't come naturally. How can we build it? Because I think that, the ability to put the work in, I like to say that we show the work behind what it takes to build the mindset that you want, that's going to drive the life you want. And it's possible. And you use the word habits. That's why I am madly in love with habits, is because there's a science to them. There are researchers out there that do so much good um, information studies to show us how to do it in a way that works. And so while most people think to apply behavior change to just our actions, something that I'm doing different, and of course I was my own first guinea pig, was applying the same behavior change science to our habits. I call them my inner habits, our inner habits of how are we thinking and feeling that's driving those actions. So I have the pharmacist piece, the health coach piece, and then of course the person living with multiple autoimmune diagnoses that are, you know, pretty impactful on my day to day.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, one of the biggest things that I really like about, what you just said, and the work that you're doing, right, is that you don't define health as, just symptom control or symptom management, right? In functional longevity medicine, we talk a lot about root cause diagnostics, system biology, personalized care. But even when people know the labs or the protocols and the science, they still struggle to follow through, right? Like that gap between knowing and living is where most people kind of get stuck. And you challenge that idea with, the equals of managing symptoms. But so how do you define real health, especially for someone living with autoimmune disease?
After I was diagnosed, I came across, I don't know if it was an article, but I came across a definition of health. If you look it up, it's some version of absence of symptoms or disease. And I saw that I had these symptoms, I had a disease, and I thought this is not going to work for us. To be able to say I'm healthy when the textbook definition that's accepted wasn't cutting it really early on, led me to get creative and define my own definition. I call it autoimmune health because I think so many people, you see autoimmune, and if there was a blank after it, how would you fill that in? Autoimmune what? And I mean, everyone I've asked, autoimmune disease. And so shifting that mindset instantly to autoimmune health is not only the health that we still have, even with this disease. So if I put all my baskets in how fast I'm walking or in how myelinated my nerves are, then yeah, I would probably fit the bill for being unhealthy. But if I expand that definition and look at my gut health, my mental health, my emotional health, my metabolic health, all these levers that I have a whole lot more control of, then all of a sudden I'm realizing that not only do I have quite a bit of health even with this diagnosis, but more importantly, what health am I going to create because of this diagnosis that I never would have if I didn't have it? And for me, I wasn't unhealthy per se, but I definitely wasn't um, scrutinizing the things that I put in my body and the thoughts I was feeding it and the movement I was doing to the level that I do now. And scrutinizing might not be the right word, but at first just becoming aware of what are we feeding ourselves in all these different ways that we may shift and change, that we do shift and change. And I'm confident that I will be healthier because of this diagnosis. And I am. I'm 14 years in, and I can point to things in my health, some of the ones I already mentioned, that hands down are flourishing because of MS.
No, I love your approach. How you took something that you know most people would take as bad happening to them and turned it into a strength to where now you are very present and intentional with your health, to be the best version of yourself, right? Because a diagnosis doesn't define who you are. What you do with that diagnosis, right, is what defines who you are and how you handle it and how you approach life. So I love your approach with that, and it's just right. It goes perfectly into like the next segment of this, the way that you kind of like took this self leadership, right? You became what we talk about at Nava Health all the time is one of the biggest mindset shifts that we try to create is helping people to become the CEO of their own health, right? Because at the end of the day, doctors, nurse practitioners are guides, coaches are guides, data is feedback, but no one is gonna, lives in your body except you, right? No one is coming to do the work for you. You could take a horse to water, you can't make them drink. And you talk about coaching people in self leadership instead of positioning yourself as, another practitioner, like you just said. So, what does it actually mean to become your own primary care provider? And, why is that mindset so critical for health now, but also long term health and longevity?
It's a strategy straight from the habit science. I have a tool, I call it the ABC Habit Playbook, but it pulls in all of the various strategies out there that when we piece them, the right strategy at the right time for the right shift, really we can take on our opponents with symptoms, which are diagnoses. But the one that I want to highlight here is called the support squad. And so it's kind of a paradox of what you're saying, where we need other people. We need support in different ways. We need to assemble people we trust, people who have wisdom for us. But at the center of that support squad, just as you mentioned, being our own primary care provider, we're the CEO of our health, we've got to be at the center of it. Because the number of people who come to me and they think that they are asking for, what should I eat? How should I move? What should I do? But they have diet plans. They have uh, PT regimens from their physical therapist that they just haven't acted on. They have things their doctors have already said that, hey, maybe this could help. What the difference is again that piece of, how do I actually do these things, and how do I actually incorporate myself into them? What are my preferences? Um, what do I know that maybe a doctor, a textbook, a podcast will never tell you? That's real learning when we go out to implement some of these things. We run experiments on these different habits. And yeah, we get knowledge that exists nowhere else because nobody writing those things or sharing the podcast, um, even us, we don't know what it's like in your body, just like what you said.
It's so important to for people to stop outsourcing their health, right? To really look within inside, take accountability, really become that CEO, primary care of your health, and reflect on really what your body is telling you, right? Our bodies are, the most interesting, fascinating, extraordinary creations ever created. They can do amazing, wonderful things, and one of the things that it can do is that it can, it can heal, it can repair. As long as you give it the right inputs, you'll get those same outputs, right? So I think, a lot of things that you mentioned. So talk to us and really break down one of the frameworks that you just mentioned, the ABC Habit Playbook. You know,
Yeah.
I love that because I come from a sports background, but break that down for us and we can dive into that.
Yeah, well, we're already using the science by using a framework. So there is a epidemic happening of information overload. People have tagged it as infobesity. There is no shortage of information out there from, I mean, even we both are podcast hosts. We are contributing to the information overload. And so that's why these conversations are so important in terms of always pairing it with action. And so frameworks, the reason that they work well when we are looking at trying to get a hold of something like our health is because frameworks can help us calm the overwhelm that we could be doing everything, versus what is a framework that is holistic. It includes all the different parts of my health, my life. It makes sense to you. It's based on science. It's one you trust. And it helps your brain remember it too. Frameworks are sticky. So, I'll have, clients who they're out in the world and they can remember, one of the plays from the playbook is trust in the tiny, right? So it's not just a tiny habit, but pairing that, oh, I can trust that doing a 1 minute meditation instead of the 30-minute planned is going to make a difference in my nervous system health, in my consistency that I'm creating, in my all these different areas. And so it's when we have frameworks that we can remember, we are more likely to use them. And so the ABC Habit Playbook is kind of what it sounds like. I know you and I both love sports, but it is the strategies that, again, backed by science, they're simple. I've definitely reshaped some, added some. It's a good thing that it's some of the ones you've likely read in books. So I don't think I've ever had a client not at least purchase Atomic Habits or Tiny Habits or The Power of Habit. So all of those are incorporated into the playbook, plus some that are just for us living with autoimmune disease because we're a little bit special. But you think of them as a playbook, meaning different different strategies may work for different habits or different opponents that we're working towards. And the other analogy there is the time you spend learning about it, whether it's watching a 6 minute overview. I'm thinking of my membership, and I have the playbook packaged in a way that we come in, we tap back in. Why does this work, and how do I apply it to this habit? But then the rest of the time is get out in game time, get out in life and use it. We don't need to sit and just learn more and more information. We need to make sure that we are learning it for the purpose of turning around and putting it into play to live the life that we want to be living. Because why do we want more information about health? Because we want to feel healthy. We want to get to do the things that we want to do, and we want to function the best that we can. So the playbook is just a super usable, tangible go-to for, okay, I want to make this change, but it feels hard. How am I going to do it? And so it kind of gamifies it a little bit, and it works. If you work it, it works.
Having those little, nuggets to help people, one, I think gamifying it, makes it interesting and it makes it fun, right? It doesn't make it feel like it's just another chore. But I think it really helps it, set in and settle with people that, it's similar to sports, right? No one expects perfection in sports, right? You do your best to be perfect. You show up to practice, but sometimes you miss, sometimes you lose, but you adjust. You get back in the game. You have that next play where you have that opportunity to do better, right? And I think it comes back to the same mindset with health, right?
Yeah.
People expect themselves to be perfect or they quit. But, it's not about perfection. It's just about consistency, right? If you didn't do a great job today, guess what? You have another opportunity tomorrow to wake up, show up, get back to the playbook, get back to the drawing board, your ABC playbook, and just apply, the simple frameworks that, you can hold yourself accountable for.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, like I'm in love with habits. I am in love with the idea of coaching as well. Like no surprise, it really was working with a coach and more in the mindset realm. Because, like you said, I knew the science. I knew what habits were going to help me, and actually, I had a pretty easy job of this looming why of my independence and my mobility that I didn't have too tough of a time changing things that I wanted to change. But it fascinated me that so many people do, and so I just love how I just love any chance that we can break down the barrier that people think, oh my gosh, if I had to get a health coach for something, then I must have failed. I must be weak. I don't have any willpower. It is not that at all. I mean, I coach physicians, PTs, nurses, pharmacists because we're human. We're all human. And instead of looking at it as, oh, I need to get this support to round out my support squad again, it's like, oh, I get to, just like I get to, get the expertise from a CPA for my taxes or from a hairdresser to cut my hair, like really looking at it as a gift to help you go further and do it in a way that's actually enjoyable, and you're not just gritting your teeth trying to reach some there that, spoiler alert, once you get there, there will be a new set of challenges, like you said, and hards to deal with. And how well we get at dealing with them is everything.
No, I think that's the never ending race of life, right? Is you have your sight set on a destination, And the closer you get to it, that the further the finish line gets. And it's just part of that never ending cycle of just wanting to be and wanting to continuously improve and better yourself. Because at the end of the day, right, that's it's we're here for a very short period of time, and we should be giving it everything that we can to live our best life, to make a change, make an impact, that really really shapes everything.
Well, and I love your focus on identity because, when we are handed these things that maybe are outside of our control, which all humans are being handed, not just those of us with a diagnosis, but we can shift back to what are the things we can control. And one of the most important pieces that we can control is who we are in this circumstance. Who am I with this diagnosis? And who are we going to become on our way to some of these goals that we set for ourselves? It's beautiful because we can change in ways that feel good and really, talking about legacy, really cause a ripple effect in others around us.
Yeah. No, I think it's you're speaking my language, Amy. Um, Talk to us about what are some other frameworks that you have found very beneficial and useful in your practice in helping other people. Take something that might seem super complex. I think people kind of overcomplicate things in their head too much, but like you're saying, you use these frameworks to help simplify that. What are some other frameworks that you like to use?
Perfect. Well, I will share one other framework that really drives all of my work as a human being trying to stay healthy and be happy, and as a coach who helps others do it. And the framework is called the Habit Hub for Autoimmune Health. Now, if you're listening and you don't have autoimmune disease, it's okay. It's the Habit Hub. These are the 6 key areas of our lifestyle that we have control over. And when you look specifically at autoimmunity, and again, this is probably certain to some extent for any diagnosis, there's this small piece that we don't have control of. So 10 to 30% in autoimmunity is our genetics. It may have happened no matter what. And the other 70 to 90% is influenced by our environment, our habits, our lifestyle. And so, what this framework does is it shifts the focus on the things that we can control. And the good news is, when I share what the 6 spokes are, these are the 6 areas, it will not be anything that you haven't heard on this podcast or from any of the functional medicine and lifestyle medicine people who are doing such amazing work. What's different, again, is just that it's placed in a framework that is all encompassing so that whenever you want to try something new, work on a new habit, or try a different approach for your health, you have a way to organize it in your brain and how it all makes sense. And so the 6 key areas are: number 1 is mindset. So we opened with mindset, and it actually colors and influences all the other spokes, but really understanding and having an awareness that we can shift and influence our thoughts and feelings. So many times we think that our thoughts are outside of our control, or one and done, or that feelings just happen. And slowing down and having the awareness that we have influence over them and can shift them in directions we want. I mean, that was the game changer for me with my first coach. Was like, whoa, you mean I don't have to believe my life is always going to be worse, or I don't have to always feel doom and gloom. And like you said, we'll still have those negative thoughts and feelings, but we just don't want them to be the ones that are predominant and driving the direction of our health and our life.
Yeah.
So number 2 is food. So that one's everybody's heard of, played with, learned things about. 3 is movement, no surprise, but so key. 4 is rest and relaxation. So that includes sleep and things we do to limit stress in our body. 5 is connections and relationships, which are so crucial. And 6 is good stresses, good in quotations. These are the hormetic good stresses that we put our brains and our hearts and our bodies through so that they can take on a challenge and come back a little bit stronger.
What would you say? Like, what is a small habit change? And it could be one of those six that actually can help create some momentum for someone who might feel stuck, right? And especially when they have this identity crisis, if they're just recently diagnosed, that now that they feel that they have this label, that is now who they are.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we absolutely can work it into the spokes. I've never found a goal or helped someone with a goal that doesn't fit into one of these six areas. So honestly, if you feeling stuck, really, this is probably we're gonna pair it with mindset and pair it with one other. So stick with me here. But the feeling of stuck, just how I mentioned that feelings aren't um, handed to us, but we have some control of them. It really is, what am I thinking that has me feeling stuck? Because before every feeling, there's a thought. And sometimes we skip over the thought. So we think diagnosis makes us feel stuck. But there really is a thought in there, a story, a narrative that we are making that diagnosis mean something that makes us feel stuck. And so really ask yourself, well, how do you want to be feeling? A lot of people come and they want to feel consistent. For me, I really wanted to feel proud. I really wanted to start to do things that helped me know that I was doing what I could for my health, and so I wanted to feel proud. So finding what would I be thinking if I was feeling consistent, feeling proud, and it may be some version of I did that, or I may not have control over this symptom, but I can control how I move or what I eat because I know I feel better when I do. And so, really, just like a habit, practicing it, strengthening that muscle, and letting it become the go-to for your brain um, is is kind of the root cause approach that you talk about. That's the root cause. But to make it more tangible for people, I would say of all these things that we can control, maybe how you move, how you eat, what is something that if you did this thing, if you made this change, if you were able to make or break this habit, you have a pretty good hunch that you're going to feel better. And I've never met somebody who doesn't have an immediate answer for that. Sometimes it's exercise, sometimes it's food, sometimes it's I just need better sleep. And starting there to become consistent in one tiny change in that first area that comes to mind is a momentum builder like no other. Your brain will try to tell you, oh, you can't, that one small thing won't work, or you need to do more, or it needs to be drastic. But reminding it we can trust in the tiny and calm that overwhelm by starting with just one.
Before we continue, I want to share something deeply personal. The real reason my family started Nava Health. Over a decade ago, my mom was on her deathbed. Her organs were failing, and the doctors told us there was nothing they could do except keep her comfortable. In that moment, everything changed. We realized traditional medicine had limits, especially when it came to proactive and preventative root cause medicine built for long term health span and lifespan. At Nava Health, we take a data driven precision approach to longevity. We test over 90 biomarkers to uncover exactly what's happening inside your body, and we build a personalized plan designed around your unique biology. Because fatigue, brain fog, weight gain, they're not random, they're signals. And when you listen, your body can heal. This is functional longevity medicine done right, comprehensive, proactive, and built to help you feel and perform your best at any age. Go to navacenter.com and take control of your health today. Now back to the show. I guess you're kind of talking about it, but how do you coach people out of that all or nothing mindset that kind of just destroys consistency, right? It's kind of like they set out a goal to work out for an hour every single day. Well, guess what? They woke up 30 minutes late, and now that workout's going to be 30 minutes later. They're in that phase of deciding, do I at least go get 30 minutes in, or because I'm not getting my hour, I'm just not going to work out at all, right? So how do you coach people out of that?
What a good question that really routes back to the playbook. So, the playbook is so in everything I say and do. I'll try to call out which plays, but one of them is habit hurdles. So like let's say someone really wants to, this happens all the time. I want to do it 7 days a week. I know I can do it 7 days a week. That's what I should do. So we pretend, okay, we're meeting back here in a week, and you're reporting to me that, you know what, it didn't happen. What are the reasons that you would tell me what got in the way from you in your 7 days? And so, though, I call those habit hurdles. So then they'll start to say, oh, well, maybe I didn't feel like getting out of bed this day, or maybe my kid had an unexpected volleyball game I had to go to, or maybe the weather was just too cold, or they canceled the class. All of those hurdles that we can actually plan for because we have a pretty good idea what most of them will be, or maybe you just didn't feel like it. Those then become the exact things we problem solve for, which Quincy Jones calls, he says, I don't have problems, I see puzzles. So then they're just puzzles that we say, all right, let's make a plan for the moment when you just didn't feel like it. And let's make a plan for what's going to happen if a child sporting event pops up. And we almost solve in advance. And so when they're living their life in that moment, it's like it doesn't take them off guard because we've already talked through how we are going to get around that. And sometimes one that we never even imagined will throw us off course during that week. But that's a cool part because then we're like, oh, what are we going to do next time? And so slowly but surely, you just start to identify every hurdle that tries to come up. And then we find the right play, we find the right strategy to get around that.
I think that that's huge because I think it happens to the best of us, right? It again, it's we can strive to be perfect all we want, but perfection is a fairy tale. Um, it's something that we work towards. It's something that we want to be. But it's okay, right? What matters most is the consistency. It's showing up every single day, even on the days when you don't want to, and even on the days where you fall off, right? But you got to get back up and you got to get back into the game. That I think is one of those things that we don't see enough of, right? We don't see the mental toughness of people, being willing to get back into the game or to get back up, and they kind of what's it they stop doing it for a while. And even though when they know deep down in their heart that this is what's best for them, this is going to take them to that next level. This is going to make them a healthier individual where they can show up for the people around them to then make that ripple effect of the impact that they have around the people, the loved ones, the friends that are around them. So
Another thing back to identity that in that moment, like you said, how would you coach them? One of them is also pointing out that as we get started with this, the whole point isn't even the habit. So let's say it's exercise. The whole point isn't even, what strength are you building? What calories are you burning? What mobility are you getting? The whole first point is to build self-trust that when you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. So that's the consistency builder and the habit builder before all of it. And coming back to that play I said that we use constantly is trust in the tiny. That trusting that any version that keeps you showing up that day, trusting that that is the way that we progress, we add on, and we just lay bricks layer by layer, and the other stuff starts to feel easier when you become a person that knows. This is like my ultimate goal for anybody who ever works with me. When you become a person who knows that when you set your sight, your calendar, your heart on something you want to do for you, you show up just as if it was a family member, and you just build that trust. And it just is the skill that just you can insert anything you want to do into that moment when you show up for yourself,
yeah.
and it really goes a long way.
I think I love this whole discussion around self leadership, about mindset, about habits and consistency, and having that discipline, because I think it's not talked about enough in terms of how it correlates to health,
Yeah.
right? I think anything in life, right? Having those things, the right mindset, having self leadership, the habits, being consistent, the discipline in life, it's universal, right? You have those things. It not only shows up in your health, right? It shows up in your relationships, your marriage, your parenthood. It shows up, in your success of just overall life. If you have those things and you put together, these strategies. I don't think it's talked about enough, though, in correlation to health, and I think it's so important because um, it's again, it's choosing your hard, right? Because being healthy is hard, but so is being sick. So which one do you want to choose?
Can I share one more play that I think will help with this in
Yeah.
case someone's listening? And this may be speaking to whether you have an autoimmune diagnosis or not. I know that's my love language, but there's a strategy, a play, and it's called Ask a Better Question. So sometimes in that moment, there's the reality of we have set this plan for ourselves, but we may not have the energy. Pushing through really may be a detriment to our bodies. And so with that, I arm people with a really good question to ask in that moment. When we are at the point where we are going to ditch the plan we set for ourselves, right? So we had a plan, we want to follow through on it. We know this, building this skill, a question, but we're worried that we're fatigued. And is this smart to push through it? A question to ask yourself is, in this moment, do I, we're always going to show ourselves love. I mean, that's a non-negotiable. But in this moment, do I need tough love or do I need gentle love? And I can give scenarios in my life and a million clients where the exact same scenario has two completely different answers. Only you know the difference. And sometimes, you are the best person to give yourself a little tough love and say, okay, I know that my brain's telling me I'm too tired, but I can do this. And sometimes you are the only person that can say, no, I do need to rest. And so asking that and choosing very on purpose what you're choosing to follow through on and push on is a piece that time and time again, I use it, my clients use it all the time, and feels like it keeps us in integrity with ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. What would you say? What's one habit that you think everyone underestimates?
I call it a hot date with yourself. So once a day, right? If you can commit to carving out a little bit of time for you and you, it will serve you forever. Because let's say you want to meditate, you already have a hot date with yourself. And so you could try it there. Let's say you want to read more. Well, do it then. Let's say you want to move more. Like at protected time that your family knows this is your time. If that's the case, first thing in the morning and right before bed are the two um, most likely not to be interrupted times. But if you can establish the habit, even if it's like a certain place in your home, I have a chair that I like called my hot date with myself. Give it a name that when you see it on your calendar or you see it on your to-do list, you can't wait to show up for it because it is a place where, again, you hold the space for yourself. You could journal, you could meditate, you could breathe, you could call a loved one, you could plan meals, anything that you want to do. And I'm like going around the habit hub, as you can tell, uh,
Uh-huh.
maybe, but I think in my hot date for myself, I often say, okay, what spoke needs a little love right now? Is it rest? Is it movement? And kind of again using the framework. But if you carve out, it could be 30 minutes. It could be start with 10. If that feels like a lot, start with 10. And that is a habit that then holds this beautiful space for other things that you want to experiment with and could be so good for your brain and body.
No, that's amazing. Going back to the science, right? You bridge conventional medicine and the functional medicine insights, and obviously with your coaching. Where do you think that today the medical system gets it right, and where do they fall short?
They get it right, definitely in acute medicine. I work in a large hospital, tertiary care center, and we need surgeons, we need emergency rooms, whether it's controversial or not. We need vaccines, we need things to protect uh, people on that scale. Chronic disease care is lacking. And it's not even anybody's fault. I mean, the physicians that I partner with, to be an extension of, you know, I know that, they'll say, I know food and movement and consistency is something my patients need. I don't have the time. Some people, they always talk about how much nutrition classes physicians get, and it's not much. And that's not their expertise. That's not what they need to be doing. So we're back to the support squad of,
Yeah.
think that where it falls short right now is the awareness that coaches are out there or different people on the support squad and physicians. I'm asking, like, I want them to lift us up, to make it a part of the plan that their patients get a support squad that helps them follow through, because these things, these lifestyle habits, they not only feel good, but if you're living with a diagnosis, they give you the absolute best chance to function at your best now and into the future. And so why not set ourselves up with every possible convenience or luxury to help us do it?
The thing that I keep kind of coming back to in my head is this support squad, right? Is, I'm a CEO or the head coach of my team, right? I'm going to go out there and recruit the best players to have on my support squad,
Yeah.
right? Knowing that not one person is going to be an expert in all, but if you bring all of them together, then you have that expert team together. And that's, one of the things that we did really well here at Nava, right, is that our platform, the protocols, the medicine that we practice here isn't based off of one person's experience, knowledge, and what they feel is right. We've really listened to all of the providers that we brought to the table, whether they be a doctor, nurse practitioner, PA, a nutritionist, a massage therapist, acupuncturist, and they don't even need to have any of those medical titles or background, right? Our stance is that someone who is knowledgeable and has the information to add value to the discussion, right? That they should be able to have a seat at the table, speak their mind, and then as a team of experts that we have brought together and assembled can make that decision together, because that's truly, again, you can't just sit there and rely on one person. Like you said, like a doctor isn't going to be an expert in nutrition. That's not what they're taught in school. um, but they are experts in certain things, and they are can be a huge they are a huge, they're probably your quarterback, right? Then you have your nutritionist, who is, your running back or your receiver, right? It's assembling that support squad of bringing in all the experts so that you can take all those bits and pieces of information, together and apply it in your daily actions, or find a group like Nava, that has already done that for you.
Yeah.
But still, even with us, you still want to have that support squad, to make sure, one, to hold you accountable, to be able to bounce ideas off of. So I love that framework that you keep bringing up, and I think that's super impactful. That's, if anybody takes anything today, right, is don't just rely on your primary care or just your OBGYN, right? Build that squad around you, that is going to give you the best opportunity to, be successful in, what your goals are, because at the end of the day, it's your health goals.
Yeah, and BJ Fogg, he wrote Tiny Habits. He's another one of these expert greats. He said if he could boil down 20 years of research, he would boil it down to emotions create habit. So when you are building your support squad, pay attention to where you are feeling the most empowered, where you're feeling the most seen, where you're feeling the most heard. And because if we're feeling those things, we're more likely to follow through on the things we want to be doing. And so, again, really tapping into that. And I would say, I still have clients usually in the more remote parts of the country, and even in other countries. There are amazing physicians out there, but some come to me and they say, well, my doctor said that food doesn't matter, or my PT said that I can't get better. And so my only ask, when you ask, like, where is it broken, are the, I agree. And, you can't find a perfect diet or if anyone claims it's the diet for anything, then that's a red flag. And so I
Yep.
think physicians worry that their patients will not potentially take a medication that could help them because they think diet will quote unquote save them. But I guess, yeah, I guess that's sometimes what broken is throwing out how much power we actually have. And because if someone hears that from a doctor, they trust their doctors.
Yeah.
And so they may, and so it's kind of undoing that. And I love it when my clients are like, I'm going back and telling my doctor, when they're the ones, but they're being their own CEO. Like if the number of people who come and I'm like, you are amazing. If you found me or another coach and you hired a coach, you find Nava, you are being a CEO in such a beautiful way.
No, yeah, exactly, right? Because and we're very upfront and transparent to clients is that we don't replace your primary care, right?
Yeah,
We will work in adjunct with them. We will support and guide them on any information that they need. We're not here to do their job, but also, we're not here to let them dictate how we do our job, right? We will work with them and side by side in tangent because we come with different specialties than they do. We are here to help support you with your longevity, right? Being proactive and preventative, avoiding the chronic diseases or treating the root cause. Where you mentioned before, right? There is a specific, there is a need for traditional medicine, right? Acute
yeah,
care does, works extremely well. And not to say that's all that it can do, but it's just one of the places that, just comes top of mind. um, but yeah, so before we round out the episode and we close out, I just have a couple questions. Just want to run down and get your response on some of them.
sure.
So first one is, what is the best advice you've ever heard or received?
I go back to my dad when I was young. He always told us never suppress an urge to be generous. And I really try to use that in generous with things that, could help me with self-care, generous to other people. That when you feel that flicker of generosity, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's a smile, and you really train yourself not to move past it, I think it's changed my life in a lot of ways.
I love that. Gotta love the advice that the fathers or father figures. For me, so my dad was my head coach. Man, I mean, he's been my head coach for life, right? I mean, obviously. But in terms of sports, I mean, since I was 5, all the way through high school. So I've had plenty of advice given to me on, very long car ride homes after the game, even though most of our leagues and teams, we never really lost. We were always winning, but my dad had very high expectations and set the bar high of um, not just shooting to be good, right? Good is average, right?
Smart.
Shoot to be great, to be excellent. And so I just, if we won the game, right, that was the expectation, right? I'm not a big fan of participation trophies. That a lot of um, things, a lot of leagues and companies are giving out, these days, just because of how society's been shaped. Um, it's really about being rewarded for the effort and the work that you put in. So, but long story short, love advice from dads.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, let's see, the next one is, what is the biggest problem that you're trying to solve in the world right now?
To let people know that they can be healthier because of a diagnosis. May take redefining what that means, but it's not this in spite of, it's not this even with, but it does not need to take from us all the things we wanted. We just may have to get creative about how we get there, but a commitment to get there.
No, I love that, and it goes back to what you said earlier, right? Is that you are not defined by diagnosis, right? You are it is what you do with that diagnosis thereon after is what defines you, and how you handle that and how you overcome that. You know, it's a hurdle, a habit hurdle, or adversity, being thrown your way, right? And adversity builds character and really shapes who you are. So I love that. All right.
Funny you say that also. Like I have a nephew, and like a paradox mindset is really a neat thing to develop, where we can hold two truths to be the same. They seem like they're opposite, but they're both true. And I remember once having the thought where I want my nephew. I don't have kids, and my oldest nephew, he's 18 now, but I thought I want him. When speaking of legacy, when I'm gone, for him to be like, oh, my Aunt Amy was this, 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 this. Oh, and then, number 12. Oh, and she had MS. So that was very true to me. But then at the same time, I also would love if he said, my aunt, the first thing, my aunt had MS and she blah, blah, blah. So like these two truths, I love what it is in my story. And I'm okay if the other things trump it as well.
Well, it kind of leads us into the last question: is that when it's all said and done, what do you want, your legacy to be and remembered by?
That I truly helped people in a way that they felt that they were seen, accepted, loved, and yeah, that they leave our time together a little better off than when than before we met.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, Amy, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. I think these types of conversations, truly matter. Because diagnosis, they don't define who we are. They don't end a life. They reveal the kind of leader someone is willing to become from that. So I really appreciate you taking the time, breaking down some of your frameworks, talking about your personal experience. So again, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Can I close with one story that I wanted to tell so bad, legacy and longevity?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry guys. I'm holding you even longer. But I love your message of longevity and legacy, and it made me think again of this conventional medicine with lifestyle medicine. And our habits, our lifestyle, these things that we take on our own, they're the only medical intervention that will impact future generations to come. So you can go get a heart cath, you can go get surgery. It doesn't impact beyond you. But the best story of this is I had a client who was pregnant, and she wanted to make some habits when she was pregnant before the baby was born, so that the baby never existed in a house that didn't have this as the norm. And so the first one we did was eating vegetables with breakfast. So think about, for all the listeners, anything you do, not by telling people to do it, but just by doing it,
Yeah.
it's a part of your legacy, and words aren't even needed. It's just you live it, and people you never will ever meet, greats will, you know, do these things, eat this way, have these
Yeah.
beliefs handed down. So um yeah, it's kind of a cool way to think of it.
No, that's amazing. I mean, that's honestly that's what this podcast is all about, right? What legacy are we leaving? What type of mindset are we showing up in life? And how can we live a longer, healthier life, right? And so, that story, says it all, right? Because that impact that mother, soon to be mother, had is going to be a, you know, impact that just goes on for the next few generations, even when she's not here, even when they're not even going to remember who started or who taught them this, right? They're just going to be like, this is the way that we go about life, so that's amazing.
And I also have to give a shout out to Nava Health. I have a client who is a patient at Nava Health. And so when I saw your name coming through, I said, is this the same Nava Health? She said, yes. So
That's amazing. Have you talked to her since then, since you were going to be on this?
yeah. Oh yeah. She's one of my regular clients. So I know you're listening. Hello. And
No, that's amazing. Well, I obviously, appreciate her support. Everything that we're doing at Nava obviously is for our clients, right? Like I mentioned, everything that we do is based off of personal experience from my mom, and just wanted to make sure that we could carry that over and help other people who are in her shoes. But it's far greater than just my mom now, because she's not the only one who has that type of experience, right? And there's so many people that deserve this type of care and this type of medicine, this type of knowledge, the same things that you're doing. Like I said, it doesn't have to be Nava. Just make sure that you're going to a place that is trustworthy, knows what they're talking about. And it's okay for you to ask questions, right? It is okay for you to be curious. And anybody who you know gets defensive about you being curious, maybe you shouldn't be seeing them, right? So
yeah. And just like you said, I'd love to coach you if you're listening, but it doesn't have to be me. Lean in,
yeah,
find the person that has you feeling like I can do this.
yeah, awesome. Well, Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zach.
If today's conversation sparked something in you, here's what I want you to do right now. Pick one strategy, one insight, one small action you heard today, and commit to it this week. Excellence isn't built in moments. It's built in the daily decisions that compound over time. Remember, you're not just building a healthier body or a more successful career. You're building a legacy that will outlast you. And that starts with the standards you set today. Thanks for listening to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. If this episode was valuable, first subscribe so you never miss an episode. Then leave us a review to help more people find these conversations. And finally, share it with someone who you think needs to hear it. Until next Tuesday, keep raising the bar, keep pushing your limits, and keep stacking days. I'm Zach Dancel. Your legacy starts now.